When I go to my mother and my father and say, I fear, I'm frightened, I need love, I need to be validated that I'm okay, and they're not there for me, a very peculiar phenomenon takes place. I become ashamed of my needs. I become ashamed to ask. I'm ashamed to be needy. And so I begin to build up a wall. And I build up that wall so that I won't have to be loved. And I won't have to ask. I don't want it. And yet I really do. You understand? When a child is ignored and they're emotionally neglected, they're emotionally starved, they do not develop emotionally. The more dysfunctional you are, the more right you always have to be. All right, so when they're not here, get this, the thing is, the parents are not available. They're all invested in their own argument, in their own games. They both have needy children in them. They weren't nurtured when they were little either. And now what happens when this child comes along and says, I need love, I need validation, I need somebody to hold my hand, I'm frightened, I'm scared, whatever those emotions are, say, get out of here, in so many words. When the parents are not there, they're really not there for them. They're just not there emotionally. So the children now become ashamed of their needs. That's a shame base, and that's how it occurs. Now, this is what that means. I am shamed. I'm worthless. If I'm not important to mommy and daddy, then I'm not important. If they don't care if I'm lonely, if they don't care if I'm frightened, then I must not be worth as much as daddy's business, or daddy's church, or daddy's sporting goods, or whatever he's doing. I must not be worth much at all. And so we feel worthless. Is that sad? Now, I'd say 75% of you, or 80% of you, or more, have a piece of this. It may not be as profound. How many of you feel you're not as good as somebody else? How many of you feel basically flawed? Tons, almost everybody. Well, see, guilt is different than shame. Guilt is I made a mistake. Guilt is I can correct it though. I did the wrong thing, I broke it, I can buy another one, I can fix it. Guilt is repairable. Guilt is something external. Really, I did something wrong and now I'm going to fix it. But shame is not I made a mistake. Shame is I am a mistake. And there's something basically wrong with me. Now, I want to ask you this. Somebody that feels really flawed and ashamed, that's really shame-based, you tell me how good a candidate they make for intimacy.
Horrible.
You know about that. Horrible. Is that the way you feel? Now you speak in first person?
Yes.
Do you hear what I'm saying? Now I feel flawed, I feel unworthy, I feel unlovable. And because of that, I have a big hole in me. I have a big place that aches in me. And I don't like pain. I'm like anybody else. I don't like pain. And so my whole life has been a quest to overcome that pain and somehow feel okay about myself. So I'm not an alcoholic. I am a workaholic. And somehow, if I work harder than anybody else, and I climb this hill first, and it's a hard one, and I get to the top, maybe I'll be okay. But every time I get to the top of the hill, guess what happens? I don't feel okay. And when somebody says, that's a good job, Jones, you got more done than anybody else, how long does that last for me? I keep seeking to satisfy my need in ways that cannot satisfy my need. Do you understand? That's the basis of addiction. That's the basis of neurosis. Neurosis is any behavior that you do that's maladaptive behavior, right? To cover up your pain. Do you think I work to cover up my shame, my pain? Can people drink to cover up their pain? Can people eat to cover up their pain? How about shopping, ladies? Yay! Let's get a good one. If you're going to have an addiction, let's get a good one, right? Can people get into sex to cover up their shame, their hurt? See, what I am saying is any behavior that causes you to get out of your pain, that's not legitimately suffering through your problem, is going to become addictive behavior. It's compensating behavior. So my whole life, I have become a human doing instead of a human being. You ever heard that before? You see how people go to drugs? Why wouldn't I go to drugs? Why wouldn't I go to alcohol? Why wouldn't I become a religious nut? Why not become a churchaholic or an alcoholic? Because by doing that, you see, these addictions, what they allow me to do is to feel good for a while. to displace my focus from working on my shame and working on my problem. Whatever I do to avoid that problem becomes addictive behavior. Can you see this? You see, any escape to avoid legitimate pain is neurosis. And that's how we have a very, very, very addictive society today. And we're very, very prone to addiction. Does this have anything to do with parenting? This is some of the most important stuff you can ever understand. Identify these problems in your home. You parents that can't express your love and don't express it can damage these kids. Seriously. Long term, tweak them. All right. Now the shaming process is very simple. Do y'all understand it? The shaming process is not getting your needs met as a child, of being treated almost as an unimportant person. Now mom and dad may have done all kinds of stuff for you. Dad might have been out working 45 hours a day for you. Mom might be doing this and being in church all day. But it wasn't answering the needs, the love needs, the validation that the child needed. And now we become ashamed to ask. Do you think I want to ask my wife to love me? If I do and she says no, I can hardly take that rejection. So it's better not to ask. Do you understand? And so we go through life not asking. You know? And so I withdraw and I'm hurt. And many marriages are just withdrawn and polarized, and one's sitting over here in their place, and one's sitting over here in their place, each of them down in the trench with a spear and a helmet, just tolerating, not growing, just tolerating. They finally reached a status quo here, and they're just tolerating. Now I want to tell you, you're not going to be happy. Your children are not going to be happy until you solve some of these problems, because you are emotionally deprived, emotionally stunted. And there needs to be growth. Now, when you start growing, you're going to start where you left off. You're not going to take a quantum leap from age 5 to age 30. It's not going to happen. You're going to start back here. And some of you, I will tell you, are 5-year-old emotionally. How many are married to a 5-year-old emotional person? Now, what is anxiety? Anxiety is not like fear. Fear, you know what you're afraid of. There's a certain object. Anxiety is what's caused by this damage that's done with this hole in our soul, with this deficiency. There's an anxiety about me, and I'm worried, and I'm not really happy. And then when I started to get rejected as a kid, guess what I said? I go to mom, and she's not there. I go to dad, he's working. He's got his own problems, and mom and dad are fighting. And I go to mom and start to talk about something, and I have a need, and guess what she talks about? Papa's alcoholism. And they're not there for me. They're not there at all. And so when I go, there's nothing there for me. I become ashamed, and I say, I'm not going to ask anymore. Who needs you? I don't need you. I'm tired of being hurt. I'm tired of asking and not getting. I don't need you. But then I go again because I hurt. I go again, and what happens? Nobody there. Nobody's home. And so I say, I don't need love. I don't need nobody. In fact, the only emotion I have is pain. The only feeling I have is pain. I don't need love. I don't need nothing. And I'm not going to feel anymore because the only feel I have is pain. Do you understand me? And so men, what do? We begin to shut down our emotions, right? I am not going to feel anymore. I'm not going to hurt anymore. I'm not going to be disappointed anymore. I knew it wasn't any good. And then again I go back, and every time I go back, what happens? My first premise that they're not there, that there's going to be rejection, is validated. And I get rejected again. Now, do you want to shame your children? Can you shame your children? If you don't do something about you, you're not there for your children. You're not emotionally there for your children. You haven't got it to give if you hadn't got it. Now, you can do this, and you can work on this, and you can improve. But you need to understand what's happening. Let's talk some more about family systems. The family ego mass is all the unconscious and conscious myths and rules and rituals that the family hands down. And you better behave, and you better accept this, and you better believe this too, or we won't accept you and you're no good. Anxiety, acute and chronic, is ongoing forever. It's not because of any specific thing I can put my hand on. It's just that I just have a low-level anxiety, chronic, forever and ever. And that's that place in me that's hurting. That's that place in me that needs to bond with another human being. That's that child in me that wants to be loved and wants to hold another person and wants to feel safe in loving, but I can't. I can't connect. I can't bond because of the fears involved. Does this make sense? Now, does that make a pretty intimate marriage or pretty emotionally devoid? Have you got husbands? Have you got wives that can't connect with you, that can't bond with you? Bonding takes place in the very first part of a child's first few hours, that child bonds. And when that child bonds, it's conscious of the world in its own little way. And it looks out and it says, is the world safe? And somebody hits it on the can. Wow, you know? It's cold too. And look at the bright lights. Now I got something up my nose, you know? But if someone's there to love the child, nowadays a lot of them, when they give birth, they put the child right on their mother's tummy. Right now, and the mother hugs them and holds them. The bonding takes place real quick.